iCarly, like that kind of vibe.
Watch iCarly. I haven't seen iCarly.
Dude, have you the reboot?
Wait, is there a reboot?
There's a reboot, and it's like queer.
It's good, yeah.
It's good. So Sam, like the Jeanette McCurdy,
Yeah.
so she's not acting anymore. So they replaced her with, I have no idea who, but she's a queer character.
Oh.
And they like, it's not even just like that they just like mention she's queer. Like there was literally one episode where her and, what's her brother's name? Spencer had like a competition to see who could get the most girls' numbers, and like she's queer.
Nice.
And like
We'll have to look that
yeah, I like literally think there was one line where she was complaining about straight people, and I was like, oh, thank you. Anyways, hi, I'm Moo, and this is Moo with the View. Today I'm joined by Abby Cipar. We're going to talk about art.
I'm glad to be here, Moo.
Good. So if you just want to start and kind of like give a little background on your artistic career, like kind of when did you start getting into the arts and how did you get to where you're at today?
Oh man.
Oh yeah.
That's the thing.
Oh yeah.
So I think like just like everybody else, I was sort of like drawing when I was younger. So for a while, you know, I was like into like that kind of stuff, you know, like I was the kid that got like the art kit, the crappy art kit.
Did you have one of those briefcases, like the modes? Oh yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so I did that, and then like for a while in high school, I was like, I'm gonna be an English major. So I didn't take any art classes until like my junior year.
Interesting.
And then like I was in a hiking accident, so I got into like art because I couldn't like move and like,
Classic Frida Kahlo, Matisse, I see it.
So I decided like my junior year of high school that I was gonna go to school for art. So I decided on Akron because it was between Akron and Kent. And Kent's campus was like brand new and clean, and I was like, I can't do this.
You can't do
I
art
need
in a
shit
clean
in the
environment.
ceilings,
Yeah,
you know what I
it's
mean?
gotta be grungy. You have to be a little bit nervous you're gonna catch something from the walls. I got you.
Yeah, so I was like, this is where I want to go. So I went, and obviously, I was in arts education for a little bit, and then I just like, I got to the observation hours portion of it, and I was like, I don't want to do this. And so I was like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna major in painting and drawing.
So did your like desire to go to art school, did that come from yourself, or was there like a teacher that kind of like got you feeling good about your work?
So I think that like my one teacher in high school was like extremely supportive, and he was actually like one of the first people to like treat me really kindly. When I came back like and couldn't, I was like so on like so many pain medications, I didn't know what the heck was going on. I had like just gotten out of surgery, and I was like wheeling myself around.
That's like
around
a real
school.
accident.
Yeah, I had a spiral fracture in my fibula, and
I don't know what any of
like,
that means.
I tore like all of like the ligaments in my leg, and so I have like a steel plate and screws in my leg
shit.
for life.
Wow.
I'm cool. But he was like one of the first people to like he actually like wheeled me to class and stuff, like
wow.
to my locker in the morning, which was really cool. But
yeah, I mean, I would have gone to art school, someone did that for me too.
But no, and I just like, you know, you have like a presence like that with people, and you're just like, I want to find this kindness elsewhere, and so that's like what got me like interested in like the arts. And I would spend a lot of time like during lunch in the art room and everything else. So
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that the connection you have with your teacher is kind of what like
yeah.
pushed you more into the arts, because kind of going to your work now a little bit, like I definitely kind of see like the way that you're pushing fabrics together and kind of like using them to kind of almost like reproduce, kind of like, to me it's very I'm missing the word, figurative, and it's like you're pushing these things together and kind of like creating that connection again. I don't know if that's intentional or not, but I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, so like, well, one of the main like things I want to one of the goals I have for my work is to create like comfort for people, and it's sort of like referencing all of those times in which I've experienced things like that within my life. So like, I think a lot about like moments of connection and kindness with other people, especially in like queer safe spaces. So yeah, I'm very much pulling from those like small instances within my life where I felt like warmth and kindness and like, you know what I mean, you know?
Oh yeah,
like,
oh yeah.
Yeah, so it's very much pulling from all that.
So is your work very like autobiographical, or is it more kind of like pulling from your own history in a way to kind of relate to others or help others relate to others?
I think it's sort of the same, like both of those things.
Yeah, two sides of the same fabric.
Yeah, because I think it's yes. It's kind of hard to like not bring yourself into the work, I think.
Yeah.
Because you're always creating from somewhere.
Yeah, and you're like spending so much time with it, it's bound to kind of take shape after you.
Yeah, and I'm also hopeful that people can like form relationships with my work that are like that as well.
As you start to take this transition into working in soft sculpture and exploring this new medium, did that do anything for your personal growth, or did you see it more as just kind of like a natural progression in the trajectory you're already going?
It definitely felt like a natural projection because I had been working with my soft sculptures out on like the hikes and stuff.
Yeah.
So it definitely felt like something had clicked, like that was like definitely where I was supposed to be at. And even like right now, I still wonder if that is correct. You know what I mean? I'm like,
yeah.
Because I'm still like I think a painter at heart, and I still wonder.
I mean, it's interesting because I feel like the way you're using your fabrics and even like the yarn and the tassels and all that, I still see it personally. Maybe it's just because I'm a painter also, but I see it as painting, and you're using it as brushstrokes. So I guess. Like, do you identify these works as paintings, or do you kind of look at them more as multimedia or fiber or textile?
Yeah, so I began to like wonder like a couple months back if so I was thinking about binaries, right?
Oh yeah.
And so, you know, we have this very like, I feel like binary understanding of what painting is and what like sculpture is. And so I'm almost wondering if there's like, you know, we're like, we should destroy the binary of what painting is.
Yeah, fuck binaries.
You know, like, yeah, so I'm kind of like wondering if maybe like.
These are like non-binary.
Yeah, like what am I trying, like I'm questioning like what I'm trying to subscribe to.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, what does anything mean?
I feel like that's such like a hot topic right now, like
Yeah.
in every aspect. Like we are questioning gender, we are questioning what is art, we are questioning drag, we are questioning painting. So it's kind of cool that that's, I guess, happening in your work.
Yeah, I just I don't understand. Like I still am like fighting with myself over like definitions of like what do you call this? Because like a lot of people will say like anything with paint on it is a painting, or anything like made with like a motion that could mimic a brush stroke. Is a painting. But I'm just like, I don't even know. I really don't. I don't know. Like,
and then it's also, does it even matter?
Does it even matter? No, like seriously, like does it even matter? Because like we could spend all day debating whether or not it's this or that, but like at the end of the day, like it's just like gender doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know? Like,
I mean, they're just words. Like.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like the same thing as like there's signifiers, right?
Mm.
Like that signal like this is a painting.
Yeah, I think those societal kind of decisions.
It's very similar.
Yeah,
I feel like
it
it's
really
very,
is.
Like I feel like I haven't like fully fleshed it out, but like I feel like I'm onto something.
Yeah, I mean, keep going. We won't release this until you figure it out so that you can get credit for it and nobody can steal your idea. We got
I have to
you.
write some theory now.
Yeah, get some copyright real quick, yeah.
Yeah, but I'm sort of thinking about that.
Nice. So I kind of want to go back a little bit to hiking, knowing that you had an accident with hiking, but you still have that as part of your work and your process. Was there ever like any hesitation going back to it, or was it more of kind of like, I need to, go back and reclaim it?
Yeah, so my relationship with nature is like really complicated. I was like brought into like all these like natural spaces, and I was always like out in the woods as a kid and everything else. And I also used like hiking as a way to like, it was like physical therapy essentially. So like, insurance doesn't cover. So I would go on hikes to like basically strengthen my leg. And
that's like an art piece in itself.
Yeah, so I sort of like just got into the habit of hiking through that, but I was like also spending time in nature trying to like figure myself out a lot of times. And not only was I like trying to improve like the function of my leg, but I was also trying to like soul search.
Yeah.
I'm like getting on a tangent now.
No, I love tangents. I don't remember either, so keep going.
Yeah, like I just sort of wanted to like think about that and like my relationship with nature in reference to the work, I think.
So how, like with the soft sculptures that you take out into nature, what do you kind of see the relationship between, these objects that are very clearly created by a person and in the space that's very not created by a person?
Yeah, so my sculptures are basically like extensions of like my own personal queerness in nature, and sort of looking at how people approach like me in the sculptures versus like how people approach like queer people and like the signifiers of queerness. So I am very much thinking about that.
So are you doing it kind of in like a way to make this statement of like, I guess just generally can you kind of expand upon that idea of like when you say approaching your sculptures and your like queer identity, like what do you see the difference or the commonalities between those different like way people interact with those two kind of things?
Oh yeah, so you get a lot of like really weird looks. Like people are just like, what is this bright thing that you're like carrying down? This is like not. This is not something that should. It's like they're like in their mind they're like, this is not something that should be here. And I think that like I feel like as like a queer person you get that a lot. You're just like, they're like you don't. It's like you grow up in like I grew up in mostly conservative spaces, and so it's like I always felt like I shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
And I always felt like I wasn't welcome in places, and that like I stuck out, and so I wouldn't like go and interact with other people because I would be like, I don't belong here, I don't feel comfortable here. So you get a lot of that like hesitation from people that I think is very similar to like how you're like approached as a queer person.
That's so
in spaces.
Yeah, that is so like wild for me because I also take my work out into nature and I like document it there. But I'm almost on like the opposite end of the spectrum for my reasoning. Like I go out and take my work there because I wanted to exist somewhere that's natural and make it part of that space to kind of signify that this work, which is also, extension of my queer identity of like, this work is natural. It exists in this space the same way this tree and this rock and this river does. It's all natural.
Yeah.
So it's so interesting to hear that like, we're doing essentially the same exact thing for two opposite ends, which also kind of goes back to this idea of like the binary where it's like the two opposite ends of a binary, but like it's the same thing. I don't know. I felt something there. I don't know.
Yeah, and I feel like even like the things that are seen as like you go out and you like see like this giant chicken in the woods like attached to like some rotting log, right, or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like it's so bright, and you're just like, wow, you know. It's kind of interesting how like a lot of those things that we wouldn't like expect in nature belong there.
Yeah.
And we wouldn't really like bioluminescence. For
Yeah.
example. It's like we wouldn't expect it of nature, but nature is like wild and does really cool things.
It's so crazy that you bring up the mushrooms because I know one of your sculptures is kind of directly inspired by that with like the kind of layering and what's the word? I guess it is layering. Isn't that like a fancy science word?
For like a conglomerate of mushrooms.
Yeah.
The troop, I think.
The troop. Oh, that's so cool. So your little troop that you got over there.
Yeah.
But you know, it's interesting you say that because they are bright and colorful and they do stick out, but they're so easily accepted as part of nature because we're used to seeing them there. But when you're creating a sculpture that is essentially the same exact thing, it's bright, it's loud, it's colorful, it's eye-catching, but because it's you that's making it and not like nature, people look at it like this doesn't belong. That's really, wow, you just like changed my whole perspective. That was crazy in real time, like, oof. Anyways, sorry, just like at a moment. Lost my train of thought. Let's see, let's reel it back on end. So we're talking about nature and your work. Do you kind of see that as something, and soft sculpture in general, do you see that as something that'll stick with your work for like a while, or do you think that's kind of like a temporary explorative habit?
You know, I don't even know. Because I don't think I ever see myself like disconnecting from nature my entire life. Like to do that would be like a disservice to my existence.
To
on
like
this
your mental
planet.
health, yeah.
And yeah, your mental health too. So I always kind of see it as being a part of my work somehow. I don't know in what capacity, but I don't think I'll ever disconnect from it now.
So do you think your work is kind of pre-planned then? Like in the sense that like, you know nature's gonna be a part of it, that you're, sourcing your inspirations from nature, or you're, sketching out blobs and sculptures and stuff, or do you see it more as kind of like a naturally forming process?
It's definitely a process because it's like shifted since like way back in like my intro to painting days, because I was just like painting random like fungus and stuff or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's sort of just like consistently evolved based on like what I'm reading, what I'm thinking about, what I'm experiencing. So definitely a natural progression. Yeah.
Cool. And so with that, I guess, like with the shift from painting to soft sculpture, did you see your inspirations or your influences change at all, or do you think they were consistent?
But yeah, so like inspirations. So I spend a lot of time with my brother. Talk about furniture. We talk about like labor rights.
The good stuff.
Especially like so like I'm into like labor histories. Because my brother's in the IBW here in Cleveland. And then my family heritage is like Appalachian coal miners as well as like Rust Belt farmers, and so I'm always like thinking about labor rates and stuff too these days.
So how does that stuff does it, I guess, drive your work, or is it what you're thinking about as you're making your work?
I think it's definitely what I'm thinking about as I'm making my work. It's so funny because like you could literally be thinking about pizza while you're working.
Oh yeah.
But it doesn't mean it has to be like in there in me like in the thing. But I'm definitely trying to like work through like where that has a place within my work, and I'm definitely thinking like it has a place in the sense that like I didn't grow up with queer spaces, and like I didn't have access to like I didn't know what drag was, you know what I mean, until I got into college, and I didn't.
I'm so sorry.
I know, and I never had access to like anything that was like for queer people, and so I definitely think that like. Sorry, I think that turned off my head.
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
It kind of startled me a little bit.
access to those spaces and how like because of my upbringing, I don't really like hang out in those spaces too much. Because of that, like I'm very much like a homebody as a result of that. Or like I go to nature for like I feel like the same things that people go to like
a
bars
bar,
and stuff for. Yeah.
I
And
hear
so
you.
I just like I'm not really like I don't frequent a lot of like more public queer spaces.
Do you think that, because I mean, your work is definitely queer, just like even aside from the fact that you're a queer artist, like your work is very queer. So do you think that not necessarily hanging out in these queer environments, that there's like, I don't know, like how do you kind of view that relationship? Like the fact that your work is queer for the queers, of the queers, but then there is a question in there somewhere. I hope you find it.
I don't know. I'm just thinking about how, queer people exist everywhere. Like we're not just like in the clubs.
Yeah.
We're not just at the bars. And so there's a lot of different ways we express ourselves as queer people. We express our queerness. So I'm thinking a lot about that.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's an important voice right now too, because I think there is, especially with like RuPaul's Drag Race being so mainstream now. I think there is this kind of portrayal of queers in the media that we are these like club goers. We're always with our vodka sodas and like yes queen this, yes queen that, and all that. And I don't think that. I mean, I don't feel represented by that. So I think it's very important that your work is touching on this kind of other aspect of queerness. So thank you. But also, like, I kind of am interested in, like, do you see yourself maybe trying to access some of these other queer spaces? Or are you kind of like, you've done your exploration, you're cool?
Oh, I have tried. I have tried, and I just, like, I'm definitely more of, like, can we please just, like, hang out at somebody's apartment and just chill and, like, play Uno? Or something, I'm just like, I'm definitely more of like that speed of things. And I don't drink, and that's like a personal choice of mine. And so I'm just very much like, I don't spend much time in these spaces. Is that a personal preference and comfort?
So it sounds like a lot of your work kind of is almost like a challenge to you. And I wonder if you have ever like kind of dived into like where that stems from.
I think it's just like I'm sort of like a competitive person by nature. I think I have definitely, I'm like the youngest child, so
I hear you.
So I feel like that's what it stems from. But like I definitely think it's like my own like nature as like I've always like pushed myself to like achieve more and more and more, and then there's like also that expectation as like a marginalized person that you have to like go all the way up, so I think it's definitely those things.
So in that process, do you kind of like, I mean, you've talked about how your materials have been sourced from gifts or from yard sales or these external things. Do you kind of have like a different feeling about things when it's your own materials that you're sourcing for new projects?
Yeah, I really have come to dislike like going and buying fabrics at like Joanne Fabrics. Yeah, I enjoy like browsing the fabrics, but it's just like anymore I just like get to thinking about like, and it's always like the labor aspect of it that like gets my wheels turning, and I'm just like, where did this come from? What labor was involved making this? Was it a form of exploitation? Yes. And I just like, I can't, and I know that like every fabric is gonna have that innate like labor history to it, but it's just like, I can't like vibe with the current state of things and buying like new fabrics.
Yeah.
I don't, it's just something about it that I'm just like, I can't anymore. And like I did it at the very beginning because I didn't have like any fabric to use, so I had to like go buy it. But I'm just like, no, I just can't bring myself too. So yeah.
So how do you like balance, like, I don't know, if you have like a vision in your head, like for example, the gold velvet piece behind us, like that one, if it was not gold velvet, it would be a completely different piece. So do you ever find yourself sacrificing your intentions and your thoughts because of what you have?
I don't know for sure because like I don't know what intentions I have until like the piece is done.
Ooh.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that was so mysterious.
Like
I don't know my intention. Ooh.
Well,
yeah, no, I hear you. I mean,
no,
you're
like,
like developing it as you're
yeah,
going.
and I'm just like focused on like the work.
Yeah.
I'm not really focused on like when I'm making something. I'm not necessarily focused on like the meaning of it while I'm working. Like I'm not like sewing, being like this stitch represents this stitch
represents life. This represents labor, consumerism.
Yeah. So I'm not like I'm like not like I titled a piece based on like I was listening to a lot of like women's music and like feminist music and like lesbian music. So I like titled a piece based on like what I realized I was listening to at the time, and I don't think that like I'm sacrificing anything because like I don't know what it is that I'm really sacrificing until I'm done.
Yeah, you can't lose what you don't have.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then I guess do you think your fabric choices are informing your decisions and whatnot, or is it more purely just like you're creating and you're like, oh, this will look cool here?
Oh, I definitely think about just like pure aesthetics of things. Like obviously I was like, oh, this like orange yarn will go good with this orange fabric. And so a lot of like what I'm making is based on like color relationships and like material relationships and how I think things like go well together.
So then where does like the kind of conceptual side of your work come from?
It definitely comes from like the afterwards when I'm like sort of sitting with the work and you're just like, what did I like think about? And you're sort of like backtracking, like what did I think about while I was working on this? What am I thinking about now? And like sometimes I'll write things down in my sketchbook and I'll be like, I'll have a thought while I'm working and I'll just like pause and write it down.
Yeah.
Like 90% of my sketchbook is writing.
Yeah, I feel that.
Yeah. So it's like a lot of like me flipping back and being like, okay, what was I thinking about? And like, how does that fit into like everything I've done up until now and everything I'm thinking about doing?
So what happens if, you make a piece and you're like, oh, this looks beautiful, but there's no concept coming to you. There's no like meaning because, I don't know, maybe there just wasn't something thought-provoking.
I'll go home and sleep. No, seriously, I'll go home and sleep and I'll be like, I'll think on it for a little while because like it's always going to have that connection somehow and somewhere. Like maybe I just need to like make another piece and maybe I just need to see where I'm taking next to figure out where it fits into the storyline,
So you're really having conversations with your work then. You're not just you're like listening to what it's telling you, even though you're the one that kind of created it all.
Yeah, for sure.
So how would you kind of, if you were to describe your relationship to your work in kind of like, I don't know, like societal names of relationships, where would you place it?
Societal names.
Like in terms of like, do you view it as like a partner, or do you view it as like a parent or child or a friend?
Yeah, so like the ongoing like title for all of my sculptures that I photograph is like friends in common. So like the old school like queer underground, you're like, oh, I have friends in common.
Yeah.
It's definitely like this like secretive like, oh, I know what you know and you know what I know. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's definitely like a friendship and like just this close. It's a community, I think, at this point because it's like you're definitely like this. You all are in like the circle and you all know things,
Yeah. So you're saying you're creating that community almost to kind of reflect the queer community at large.
Yeah, and I think like maybe to an extent like definitely like my found family from like undergrad, I'm definitely always thinking about like all of them and how like that was just like the most beautiful experience I've ever had, like being like accepted for the first time in my life like that. And then I'm also thinking about just like sort of how I can embody that within my work for sure. But it's definitely like found family.
Found family. Yeah. Cool. Cool.
Talk about the title of the show.
Oh my god. Thank
Oh my
you.
gosh. Okay.
Holy shit.
Oh, okay,
yeah.
so this is like a really fun story.
Okay, I'm so ready.
So my favorite musical artist is Nick Shoulders. Okay, like you've never, I'm sure.
I've never heard of it. I was like, yeah, cool.
Okay, so I recently went with my brother to one of his concerts at the Winchester a while back, and this dude who's local to Cleveland actually like DJ'd the beginning of it.
I was sick.
Dollar Country, it's a great podcast. So I've been listening to like all of the episodes of Dollar Country like while I work, and so I'm like on like every episode's like an hour long, and I'm like on episode like 75 at this point.
Shit.
But at the end of like every episode he goes and he's just like, be kind to one another, and like you never know what people are going through, so be kind to one another. And so I was definitely like, that was in my head.
Yeah.
You know, so I was listening to that, like, it's old school country music. I'm sorry, I never explained that. But it's like very much like, you know, got those roots for me. And so I, you know, my parents will like listen in on it every now and then. So it's become like this connection between my whole family, which is really cool. But yeah, at the end of every episode, he'll just be like, be kind to one another. And so that stuck with me for a while. So I'm like, I was thinking about like how you're like sweet on somebody and you're like, you know, spreading the kindness. And so like that's where like sweet to one another came from. It's just like my consistent, like what I was listening to while working.
Yeah.
And sort of it vibes with like the idea of like fostering community and kindness and care within safe spaces. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Warms the heart.